Hey there, innovation champions. Melissa Dinwiddie here. After years of making art for clients, I knew that I needed to get back to making art just for the joy of it. This was back when I was a professional artist, of course. And I knew that the path to get there was play. But here's the thing. I had completely forgotten how to play. Does that sound familiar to any of you? If you're like most of the brilliant tech minds that I work with, you probably haven't thought about play as a business strategy. But stick with me, because what I discovered actually changed everything. This is a story that I feel like I've told thousands of times. It probably hasn't really been thousands, but it feels like it's been thousands of times. But it never gets old because the transformation was so profound. So there I was a recovering perfectionist who had spent years following everyone else's rules about how art should be made. And I hypothesized that if I, ever the rule follower, if I created some rules for myself, I could kind of trick my brain back into the mind space of being a little kid again. You know, little kids know how to play. And that was my hypothesis. And lo and behold, it worked. And those rules ultimately became the 10 guideposts that now form the backbone of my book, The Creative Sandbox Way. But more importantly, they eventually evolved over the years into, and kind of distilled down into, what I now call my Create the Impossible framework. And what I didn't realize at the time was that those same principles had really strategic business applications, actually really revolutionary ones. And just a year after I published my book, The Creative Sandbox Way, I pivoted from working with individual artists and individual creatives to working with teams and organizations. Though, to be quite frank with you, it took a while to gain traction. And here's why, or at least one of the reasons why. I was selling my process, play and creativity, rather than selling the outcomes and the value that I created for clients. And then came the breakthrough moment during the pandemic. So a contact that I had who was embedded at a research team at Facebook, at Meta, reached out. And this particular team had quite a lot of gaps around communication. Their really brilliant insights just weren't having the kind of impact and influence that they deserved. Plus, they needed a really serious morale boost, as a lot of us did during the depths of social distancing and the pandemic. It was a rough time. So the question was, could I help? And the answer was, why, yes. Yes, I could. So I designed what would ultimately become one of my flagship programs, which I still offer today, Communicating for Influence and Impact. And the manager was initially really resistant to how play-based the activities were. They were mostly drawn from the world of improv. So I did a lot of work clarifying for her what the specific outcomes of each activity were, designed to deliver. And she kind of grudgingly gave approval, though not without still some skepticism. But the result was that she was thrilled with the skills and the common language that her team developed. And she ended up recommending me to her colleagues. And over the next 6 months, I worked with, I think, 5 more teams over the next 6 months, and then several more teams over the next couple of years inside of Facebook. And participants saw behavior change, and they said that they were, and I quote, the most fun meetings I've attended all year, which is pretty cool, given that people were going to a lot of Zoom meetings over, the span of that period of time. So this is the power of play in driving real business results. So let's talk about some of the science behind this, because play and fun aren't just drivers of engagement, they're actually drivers of breakthrough thinking. So let's talk about why this works at a neurological level. When we play, we actually bypass that inner critic, that I call it the gremlin. That's that harsh voice that usually says things like, this is a terrible idea, or, what if this doesn't work? That voice gets quieter. Play activates flow states, and it enables divergent thinking, which is the kind of thinking that leads to breakthrough innovations. So I remember a day-long retreat that I led for a nonprofit, and we're at the 3-quarter mark approximately during the day, and we had this really deep and challenging conversation that the team had been really struggling to navigate for months. But here's the key. It was sparked after a period of really playful activities out on the lawn. So if you need to get unstuck, what happens is we often try to power our way through problems, just push, push, push. But that's rarely effective. Think about the times when you've tried to do that. Has it worked for you? It hasn't ever worked for me. And there's nothing like play to actually free up our thinking and really unlock new pathways to solutions. So let's talk about the Create the Impossible framework in action. This is where my 3-step framework really comes alive. So let's break down those 3 steps. Now, if you followed me at all, you know my Create the Impossible framework is 3 steps. So step 1 is play hard. Now, this is not go to Vegas and party kind of play. I'm talking about embracing your inner 4-year-old. Be open to experimentation. Follow your curiosity. In that program with researchers at Meta, we used improv games like one I call Time Traveler. Imagine explaining your smartphone to someone from 500 years ago. Suddenly, complex technical concepts become accessible when you have to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and really think about, how do you connect with them? How do you form that common point of connection? How do you create an analogy that they're going to understand? And getting playful in order to do that. So that is step 1, play hard. Step 2, make crap. Give yourself permission to create terrible first drafts. Really, literally terrible. The nonprofit team's breakthrough came when they stopped trying to craft the perfect solution and started throwing out wild, crappy ideas. One of those really terrible ideas ended up sparking their most innovative program. That's how it works. So that's step 2, make crap. We need the crap to fertilize the good stuff. Step 3, learn fast. Turn every experience into rapid learning. Each so-called failure becomes data. Every experiment teaches you something valuable. The meta teams didn't just communicate better, they learned to iterate their approach in real time. Let's talk about why fun isn't frivolous. Here's what the research tells us. Fun builds the exact capacities that we need to compete in today's market. Adaptability, collaboration, quick thinking, innovation. When teams embrace play, they generate more creative solutions. They communicate more effectively. They build psychological safety faster. They adapt to change more readily. And they collaborate across silos naturally, more naturally. fun isn't frivolous, it's strategic. And anyone who thinks that fun is frivolous or a waste of time, not relevant to business, has another thing coming. So let's talk about your innovation challenge. This week, I want you to try something. Pick one challenge that your team is facing, something that you've been trying to just power through with traditional brainstorming, and instead approach it with play. Maybe start your next meeting with a quick improv game, or reframe your challenge as a puzzle to be solved rather than a problem to be endured. Give your team permission to suggest crappy ideas without judgment. That's the hard part, without judgment. And watch what happens when you create space for play. I guarantee you're going to be surprised by the quality of thinking that emerges. And here's the bottom line. Innovation doesn't happen in sterile environments where everything's really serious and buttoned up. It happens at the intersection of connection, communication, and creativity, those 3 C's. And the fastest way to get there? Through play. And as I always say, play is not the opposite of work. Play is how we make work more effective. So are you ready to create the impossible through the power of play? Let me know how your play experiment goes. I would love to hear about the breakthroughs that you discover when you give your team permission to have fun while they innovate. Ready to create a more playful environment that drives breakthrough innovation in your team or organization? Click the link in the description to book a complimentary innovation strategy session. Let's explore how the Create the Impossible framework can help you transform your leadership approach to unlock unprecedented creativity and innovation through the power of strategic play. If you found these insights about innovation through play valuable, hit that like button and subscribe to join our community of innovation champions. Don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss a new strategy for driving creativity and innovation in your work. And I'd love to know your thoughts on this topic. Have you ever experienced the power of play in solving work challenges? What happened when your team embraced a more playful approach to problem solving? Or maybe you're still skeptical about mixing fun with serious business. Share your insights in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious, stay playful, and keep creating the impossible. See you next time. Ciao.